Hey everyone, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today it is the 3rd of December, 2022. And on today's show, the Kansas State Wildcats are your 2022 Big 12 Conference champions after their overtime victory over the TCU Horned Frogs. What does this championship mean for Kansas State? Obviously, some talk about what it means for the TCU Horned Frogs. Awesome game, a lot to get to, and a great day for the Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Make sure you all subscribe to the channel if you guys are new here. 5-6 days a week, we are doing Big 12 content. Usually it's around 5. Sometimes we give you an extra day, give you some extra content. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Our goal is 3K subs by the end of December, so the start of 2023. Please help us reach that goal by subscribing, like the videos, comment as well. Follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. You guys can find me at JoshNeighbors_. You all can find the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, all of those places. All right, folks. So it went down this afternoon at Arlington, Texas. Unbelievable crowd. College game day was there. The only conference championship game this weekend that featured two teams inside the college football playoff top 10. It was Kansas State. It was TCU. The spread was close. The game was close. I was talking with some of the guys I work with over at SiriusXM as a producer on Big 12 Radio, and we were kind of like combing through the ideas of like, man, how do we recap and talk about that game? And I've kind of organized my thoughts a little bit, but this is mostly stream of consciousness about what we just saw. And Kansas State winning the Big 12 championship game with 3 losses, with the quarterback change, with all of that. It proves one thing, and not just program specific. This continues to be the most exciting league in all of college football on a day in and day out basis. And this is why this year manifested even more so than normal. Think about how good TCU's strength of schedule and strength of record was. It was number 1 in the country. Not sure where it is now, the strength of record, but obviously it's going to take a hit after that. But strength of schedule was the best amongst the top 4. That strength of record was number 1. They have, 5 ranked wins. Like, it goes to show you how good this league was top to bottom. Obviously 8 teams of the 10 are going to go to bowl games this season. Just the depth of this league. Look back over the last 3 championship games, all the way back to the COVID season. Oklahoma, Iowa State, Baylor, and the Oklahoma State last year. And then this year, Kansas State and TCU, 3 straight years, 6 different teams, obviously 3 separate champions. Underdogs have won. I think they were underdog. Baylor was underdog last year, but underdogs winning the last 2. It's just a compelling, competitive, fun, awesome league to be in. And look, guys, like the last couple days have proven this, that really besides Michigan and Georgia, there's a lot of parity in college football this year. We kind of overused that, but there's a lot of parity in college football this year. And you think about what could actually happen in 12-team playoff, there is a situation where Kansas State could play their way into the Final Four. Are they one of the 4 best teams? I've got no clue. I've got no idea. But today you saw the diversity of which Kansas State can attack you and do things on offense. You saw the ability for them to get after the passer. You saw the ability for them to give up explosive plays, but still rally and do things like create turnovers and force interceptions and stuff like that, because that's what good defenses do when they bounce back. And I think this Kansas State team, it's funny because they were going to the Sugar Bowl regardless, right? And I think it also speaks to the 12-team playoff being more exciting. Like, TCU loses the game, but TCU is still going to be in the college football playoff. And that would be the case anyway, but you want to have a top 4 seed. You want to have a bye. This would make things more interesting, etc. But Kansas State, fully deserving of this and realizing what they had not all year. I mentioned this on Friday's show. The rubber had met the road at times for them against teams with a lot of talent. And don't get me wrong, I think we're realizing now Tulane, a lot of talent. Texas, a lot of talent. TCU, a lot of talent. And there were different reasons they lost all those games. Weird early season performance against Tulane, offense not being explosive enough. You have the K-State TCU game first time around, which definitely injuries could play into that for sure, but also just not being able to respond. Obviously tough to do when things are bouncing back and forth. Very challenging to do with quarterbacks and whatnot. But still, they didn't respond well in that game. And then kind of the weird decision to go back to Adrian Martinez in the Texas game. That was a back and forth. Well, it was really one-way traffic, then traffic back the other way, and not able to win that game. And so for them to go all the way back, to have Will Howard be the guy with the Martinez injury and whatnot, and for them to come into this game and they go down, they take the lead, they let TCU back. And, I think the most impressive thing is every single time this season that TCU has stormed all the way back into games, it is normally, it's been them that has come out on top. And today it was not. Kansas State, in my opinion, in the 31-28 win, they were better with the football. They were not the team making mistakes. In this game, they had one, obviously the muff punt, but TCU with the 2 turnovers, they won the clock battle by just a little bit. They were penalized just a little bit less. They were a little bit better on third down, but their third down defense was excellent today. They did a good job getting after the passer. Max Duggan, obviously in a lot of pain, but they were in the backfield all day long, 3 sacks and on the day, I'm double checking this really fast. 1 sack, but they were in the backfield the entire day. It felt like 4 QB hurries for them, and they really were heating up Max Duggan. He had a difficult time, and they were creating a lot of pressure. And Max Duggan did the best he could, stood in there all day long, took a lot of punishment. But for this TCU group, or to this Kansas State group rather, to go with the ebbs and the flows, to hang in this game, to go to overtime, to get the goal line stop, and then for them to finish this game off the way they did, cool, calm, collected, got the yardage, lined it up, made the field goal. A lot of times we joke about the hypnotoad and whatever, but TCU games can feel like they are on a narcotic and they are crazy and insane. But in this one, and there was a whole lot of that with pass interferences and reviews and injuries and turnovers and muff punts and all of that, Kansas State was keeping their head above water. They were weathering the storm. And, the nice thing for them is something else we mentioned on Friday, they built up enough of a lead when we went into the fourth quarter where because the field goal and being up 8, TCU could not beat them at that point. Now, they gave TCU the ball back with 30-some seconds left, but because of how good the punt was, really not much of an opportunity for TCU to go down the field and do anything with it. It's a reason why they took the knee and went to overtime. And so K-State did a great job of managing this football game the way you need to and weathering the eventual TCU storm the way they had to. I think a good example of this is the way that Julius Brents played today. Up and down day for him. And there's a lot of down days when you have to cover a guy like Quentin Johnston. 4, I think for 139 it was for Quentin Johnston on the day. And that doesn't factor in, I think it was either 1 or 2 PIs that went against, I'm not sure if it was Brents, but whoever was on Quentin Johnston, right? And Max Duggan makes that critical mistake in the end zone, and Brents, because he was not down on himself, was paying attention, was fully there, is able to make that catch. And there's one earlier in the game, I think he dropped, but he's able to be present and stay with it and make that huge interception in the end zone that really, didn't, I wouldn't say it turned the tide, but it stopped some momentum heading the wrong direction for Kansas State. And for them to just stay the course, to be there, to be present, to get the job done. I am so impressed with this team. And look, what this means for their future too, not just right now, but for their future. Will Howard was strong today. I would give him strong as a nice word to use, I think. 18 for 32, 199, 2 scores, missed some throws, especially that one there on that final drive where he was a little too high looking for Cade Warner. But still, just this guy, Will Howard, they win with this guy. They believe in this guy. He changes the offense for them with the way he's able to play. Obviously, Deuce Vaughn does a lot, and they're going to miss him, but he's got a long way to go, Will Howard does, and they're already really good with him in there. I'm sure a lot of UK State fans see it too. He's a really good player, and I think, it's my honest opinion that, if he gets all these reps, obviously as the number 1 guy for the bowl game, plays the bowl game, the whole off season, all that kind of stuff, and he arrives next year and delivers and kind of keeps continuing to get better, this might not be a guy who's going to need that final year because of his, like the NFL falls in love with these guys who are big and athletic and can throw the ball downfield. And he's got to work. There were a couple of times today where it looked like he was just kind of short arming it. And some passes that he could have rocketed in there. The way Max Duggan is really good at throwing the deep ball, knows the touch there, and he throws some rockets in the short yardage. There's one today, middle of the field. It was an absolute laser that he threw. And I thought Will Howard, once again, there's recognition stuff. He took a really bad sack today, but still managed the offense, threw 2 touchdowns, ran for another touchdown, and got the job done. So despite all the mistakes that he made, he's still a guy that can help you win football games. And I think not just help you win football games, he can be winning the game for you. I think that's in his future. They're set up very, very well for success down the line and to continue this program growing. And the reason why I'm not, talking about just right now is because we're talking about the growth of the new Big 12. And we saw what happened with Oklahoma State and Baylor, really down seasons. That's there. And then now I think Kansas State is in a position where they're going to be losing guys, but they've got somebody at quarterback that I really do think can manage it. And it's not just one game or a half like we saw from Blake Shapen. It's more than that Will Howard's shown he can do. And for them to weather the storm, him to be at the helm, excellent job. Chris Kleiman and his staff have done such a good job. Colin Klein adapting and learning kind of as I think his quarterbacks have adapted and learned. And Chris Kleiman's mentioned this too. It's a player-led team, player-driven team. And for K-State to go, this is a team that, they're going to lose some guys, but once again, they can keep this thing going, I believe. Not at this level. There's going to be some attrition at times, but because of how well coached they are, I think there's a really good chance that Kansas State can be that team, sticks around 8-4, 7-5, and then makes those pushes 10-2, 11-1, 12-0, like TCU just did, right? And can kind of get in this space. And hey, look, you don't even need to do that all the time. If we're talking about college ball playoff moving forward, 10-3 would do the job. If we're in that 12-team playoff, we're going to see in 2 years Kansas State winning the Big 12 championship game against an undefeated team that they already lost to once. Just quite the story. It's obviously made the college ball playoff more interesting, but the Cats deserve so much credit. And look, it was the sexy dark horse pick before the season started. 6 guys on first team all Big 12 preseason at all parts of defense, right? Deuce Green in the middle. You got the guys, Daniel Green, in the middle. You got the guys on the outside, Brents, and on the other side, Boredo. And then also, and Dike Uzama up there up front, coming off the edge, obviously Deuce Vaughn. And wide receivers, Malik Knowles, tough to see him get injured, but they used, Ben Sennett and guys like that, Cade Warner. And they just built this really this really good, well-rounded team that it's just you're not going to smoke K-State. It was just impossible to smoke K-State this year. Get smoked against Texas, but they eventually rally because of how well-rounded the team is. And if they can continue to build teams like that, they're going to be great. But this group was a lot of fun to watch. Really intrigued to see who they get in the bowl game because there's going to be a lot of people who are excited and ready for that. But, there's so many schools that win or so many schools that we've been talking about, TCU, K-State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, about the future of the league. And Kansas State needs to see that Baylor and Oklahoma State can be cautionary tales and learn, what do you have to do? We got to build depth is number one thing. I think Oklahoma State's shown us that. You have to build depth. And I think they've done a pretty decent job of that. At some places, they have not, but it's really hard to build depth sometimes, a lot of really good quality depth, in a lot of places. We even saw it today at receiver, right? So continue to build depth. And then, find these quarterbacks. Find these. We saw how much quarterback really killed Baylor this year. Will Howard seems like he's a guy, and then we'll see if they can keep getting guys, Skylar Thompson, I know with his injuries, whatever, but that's a really good program leader and builder. And you transfer from that to Adrian Martinez, who's obviously a really good leader. Transfer from that to Will Howard, you're in a really good spot. And so keeping the line moving, Deuce to DJ Giddens, right? Keeping the line of succession moving in certain spots is how you keep these programs on the up and up. Chris Kleiman knows what it's like to, what it's like to win guys at a very high level. That at FCS, he's one of the decent clip now. This, last year, there's some questions about Chris Kleiman. This put him over the top. Talk about, hey, can you win the big game? He won the big game, beat an undefeated team, won a Big 12 championship game. So impressive for them to do it. And they're a very deserving champion. They're an incredibly deserving champion. I picked TCU in the game. I expected a close game. For once this year, TCU blinked. TCU was the team that blinked. And Kansas State fully took advantage of that. The goal line stand was amazing to see. And kind of on that, as we transition to TCU a little bit, eventually, they got caught. They got caught. When it comes to them in this game, you can say Kendre Miller was over the line. That's not really what I care about. All right. Because that stuff, I say this all the time, that stuff happens in games. The same way I'd say injuries happen in games. I said earlier in the year, Kansas State had a bunch of quarterbacks injured against TCU the first time, right? They still did not respond well at all on defense to what was going on in the game. They kind of got walked over for a bit of that game. Injuries happen. Bad calls will happen in games. How do you respond? Well, that bad call, guys, they should have run the ball twice with Max Duggan, sneak that ball in there. And I understand, hey, if you can't get, 1 yard on 2 separate plays, you don't deserve to win. Yeah, well, it's all about how you go about trying to get the yard. Garrett Riley this year has been fantastic, and for the most part. Now, there have been some sequences where I actually have thought, they're going away from the run too much. Oh, here comes the run in the second half. Forgot about the run. Here comes Kendre Miller, right? Oh, they're too passy happy right now. Kind of the same thing we were just mentioning there. I know Max is banged up, but he's the best player in the team. Run a boot or something like that, but sneak that thing twice, man. Get Conright behind him, or Blair Conright in there, and sneak that thing in. Run the ball behind him. I don't know. I mean, that's he's been your best player. Don't take the ball out of his hands. I thought that was. It was just not a really smart decision for them to do. Excuse me, get Jared Wiley in there and run the ball behind, have him help you get that push. It's a big dude. Max Duggan's, a thick dude, not really tall dude, but he's a thick dude. They should have gone with a QB sneak. They should have done it twice. I don't like to armchair quarterback, but there are certain situations coaches just struggle so much in short yardage. K-State was not immune to that earlier in the game as well. Now, they got the next fourth down. They did a good job of getting that ball forward. There was a Giddens run, got a better push up front. But that, for Max Duggan to carry them the way he had, running the football really well, and I know he was so injured and so banged up and you're hesitant to do it. But shove that man over the line. Or whatever you do, don't take the ball out of his hands. I know Kendry's a bowling ball, and from short it makes sense. But when you've got that small of a space to go, I hate going backwards. I've always said this, and I know it's against armchair quarterbacking, but I don't like having to go backwards to get the ball forwards. I don't like toss plays on 3rd and 4th and short. I don't like plays where you have to go take the ball backwards, let the running back get forwards, just snap it and go forward. Push your way. If you can't get the push twice from 2 sneaks, what are we doing? Because if you run the ball short, gives your time off for your offensive line to get that push. But it allows that, and that's a good defensive line they got to fill the gaps. I think it was Felix Anudike-Uzomah got the final stop there. And so I thought they came up short in that department. They've been so good pressing the right buttons at the right time all year long. And so I'm not saying this is some big indictment, but they messed up right there. They messed up. And I think that cost them a chance to, no guarantees they would have won, but it cost them a chance at the Big 12 championship game. Credit to K-State's defense for getting the stop, right? If they ran the play and that you stopped them. But I find it hard to believe they would have stopped a sneak twice from that spot. I think they just kind of went with the wrong, if you all listen to the show, I don't discuss specific play calling a whole lot. That's not my bid. I didn't play football. I study as much as I can. I talk to people like Gabe Eichert, who I work with. I ask him schematic things all the time. Hey, how do you handle gap scheme against zone scheme, running wise, if you're on defense, all kinds of stuff like that. Right here, this is one of those where you just, run the ball. Yeah, sure, whatever. You got to run the right play though. You got to be, I know it's predictable, but give it to Max Duggan. Push that pile forward, have Giddens and have have Miller come up, push the pile alongside, Jared Wiley. have him in that fullback. I mean, just do something. Like do that. Do the most obvious thing there that you should do, as opposed to running the play like that, because we've seen it get stuff. We saw it get stuff earlier in the game. As it pertains to TCU in the college football playoff, all right, and there's a lot of conversation about like who are the 4 best teams, whatever. All right, TCU played a lot of close games all year. They easily could have won this game, right? They live in these situations, and Max Duggan was heating up late in the game, and it was scary to see if you are a fan of Kansas State. We've seen this movie, it feels like a bunch, and I thought Max was brilliant besides the interception today, and also the one overthrow he had of Tay Barber up the seam, all right? And also you underthrew Johnston one time, but you're going to have those misses. Gutting that performance out, being there in the end of the game, I thought he was spectacular, deserving of a trip to New York. To me, it's pretty cut and dry, guys. TCU is in the college football playoff. USC loses last night. That's their second loss. They've lost the same team twice. USC has not beaten everybody on their schedule. The one thing TCU can say is they lost in the championship game to a team they've already beaten by 2 scores, despite the injuries, I know. Beating that team by 2 scores. They put them on a neutral field. It was a top 10 team. They lost to them in overtime. If you watch the game, they were inches short. Like there was not a gap. And I'm actually a firm believer in this, guys. I know K-State fans might feel like, well, we had this thing out of reach. We could have kept it there. If these teams played 10 times, it's probably 5-5. You might go 6-4 the other way. But does anybody think like there's a situation where these teams played 10 times, we'd get a 7-3, 8-2. Hell no. It's going to be around 5-5 or 6-4. These 2 teams, clearly the best 2 teams in the conference. Clearly the best 2 teams matching up in this game. And TCU can still say they've beaten everybody on their schedule. They're not a conference champion. Obviously that hurts. But it appears that there are going to be 2 teams, in this 4-team playoff that aren't conference champions. TCU and Ohio State. Then what do? You say, all right, which team actually went to the conference championship game? That's TCU. So in my opinion, TCU should remain as number 3, especially because when do we last see Ohio State? Well, they played their rival. They got smacked, and the rival doesn't really matter. Top 5 team, sure, but they got crushed on their home field. And the other team did not have their Heisman finalist, Blake Corum in that game, or should be Heisman finalist, in my opinion. In that game, and you still got waxed at home, which kept you out of your conference championship game that you didn't play in. So why should Ohio State get to sit at home, not play a conference title game because they just lost, and be able to jump a team that played that final 13th game, that lost in overtime by a field goal, that lost by inches? You can argue Kendre Miller's over the line, whatever, but like that's the fine margins we talk about. They've got 1 loss. It was in this is not some loss in regular season. It was in the extra game, a game that Ohio State did not play in for their conference, and TCU lost just narrowly. I know the desire for the committee is going to be there to put in Ohio State at number 3. So we have Michigan versus Michigan versus Ohio State in that next game. I don't think they will. I really do believe this. I think they're going to keep TCU at number 3. I think they're going to bump up Ohio State to number 4. All right. Because while TCU lost, think about the way in which both these teams just lost to top 10 teams and the setting in which they lost them to them. All right. One was a conference championship game. One was not. One was a blowout in the team's home field. One was a neutral site game that went into overtime and was a 3-point loss. So very different football games, very different results, very different circumstances. And I think with that context, it makes a lot of sense that TCU remains at number 3. Is TCU better than Ohio State? I mean, probably not. Who knows? Ohio State's not played very good games against some teams. But to me, they should be there. Also, I think that's your best chance at having 2 competitive games in the Final Four, right? Georgia versus Ohio State has a chance to be competitive. Not saying it will be, but for ratings, it's going to be a juggernaut. But Ohio State ostensibly could have a really fun competitive game. And then also Michigan versus TCU. That one feels like it could be more competitive, right? especially no Blake Corum. That one feels like it could be more competitive than if you did, well, Ohio State, Michigan, that one's just a rematch. And then TCU, which we just saw a second ago, and then TCU against Georgia is probably going to be a blowout, right? We're seeing the way Georgia looks right now, although Georgia has had some games and they have not looked great. So that's where I'm at on this situation. That's what I think with this college football playoff situation. So I would say right now, I think TCU lands number 3. TCU's in, guys. TCU is in. It's a narrow loss, conference title game after being undefeated. And the only people who can jump you are also teams that are just, that did not play in the conference championship game. So you can feel pretty good. All right, we'll have more on this championship game and more of the results, kind of what it means and stuff as we move forward. But congratulations to the Kansas State Wildcats and also all the Kansas State fans out there. You all deserve this. Shout out to both fan bases for going that and making that an electric atmosphere. Everybody was fired up and excited. It felt big. It felt meaningful. There was a ton on the line for both teams. Even though Kansas State, excuse me, already knows they're going bowling, it didn't matter. They were fired up and glad to be there and trying to win a Big 10 or a Big 12 championship game. So this league delivers once again. Another week, another result, and the biggest result that proves, and I'd love to see the ratings for this. I think they're going to be really, really freaking good. Another result, though, that proves just how damn fun this league is. Don't claim it to be the best. Don't claim to have the best talent, and have the best results and have teams winning championships. But in the sport that we all love, college football, delivering week in and week out, delivered a spectacular title game to nobody's surprise. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LO Big 12. You guys can find me at Josh Neighbors _. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Please leave comments and likes, all that kind of stuff. Love engaging with you all, and find us also wherever you get your podcast. So next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.